The Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 2nd chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. You may be seated. Well, for many of us, tomorrow will be just another Monday, but for many others of us, tomorrow is a return to routine. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who have mixed emotions about the Christmas holiday coming to an end, because school is going to be back in session. Whether you're a student who's eager to get back to school, I doubt it. Or a parent who just can't wait for Christmas to be over so that you can return to this normal routine. Or on the other side, maybe you're just dreading the fact that you can't sleep in anymore. I see you, Becca, over there. Give me a thumbs up. So there's this. It's amazing how this change in routine that's same for everyone can bring such different responses from us. And it doesn't matter across whether you're a student, a parent, or a teacher, or maybe even the years from year to year might change. When our routines change like this, we all have different reactions to it. Many times the thing you want most to happen can be something that someone else is dreading, like the beginning of school again. It's pretty jarring to have an extreme reaction to something, only to learn that there are people reacting in a complete opposite way. Whether it's a change at church, or a new boss at work, or the results of an election, or the passage of a new law, major events in the world can have a polarizing effect on people. And these days it seems like the poles are stretching further and further apart with every major and minor news story that just seems to cycle on TV. And you may find yourself at times wondering how the folks at the opposite end of the spectrum can be so completely misguided, while at the same time they're thinking the exact same thing about you. And while these things aren't always a case of misdirection one way or the other, right or wrong, in today's gospel, we get a glimpse of one of the most divisive events in history, one that has elicited a terrible response from many misguided people, but also sparked joy for those searching for light in the world. This is not the Christmas story we heard 2 weeks ago. In fact, we didn't even get to the worst part of Matthew's telling of the birth of Jesus. where we see King Herod, well, self-proclaimed king really, and the Magi sort of at opposite ends of how to respond to the fact that Jesus Christ, the one that both of them have prophesied or heard about prophesied, has come into the world. The star leads all of them, the Magi and Herod and all his advisors, to study and seek and learn just who Jesus is. And when they come to the same conclusion, they have completely opposite responses to it. To the Magi, Jesus Christ, the one they name the King of the Jews, is one who they had been hoping for, one to be honored with reverence and hope. They travel a great distance, most likely from Persia in modern-day Iran. And Matthew says their quest is simply to pay homage to Jesus. They find the child in Bethlehem, revere him, lay some treasures at his feet, and then begin that long journey back home. They don't expect anything in return, except perhaps an affirmation of the hope that's been calling them through the star. On the other hand, for Herod, this child is nothing but a threat to his throne. And later on, he commits such a terrible act of violence in order to maintain his power over the Jewish people. Just verses later, we hear about how Herod, upon learning that Jesus is the prophesied Messiah, kills every young boy in and around Bethlehem, causing Mary, Joseph, and the newborn Jesus to seek refuge in another country, until many years later when Herod has died. What was life-giving and revered for some was cause for another to bring death and terror to his own people who he was supposed to be serving. When a person truly understands who this Jesus is, this epiphany can stir up vastly different ways of living. And it has everything to do with how the presence of Jesus in our midst truly changes things for everyone, for you and for me. It turns our routines upside down. It gets our priorities out of whack, and it centers us on Jesus. And for some, that's great news. And for others, it's a little bit of a big pill to swallow. As Mary says in Luke's gospel, Jesus' presence casts down the mighty and lifts up the lowly. So no wonder Herod was nervous about giving up his power for the sake of Jesus. When God does a new thing, will you have something to gain, or will you have something to lose? Of course, it's a bit more nuanced than that, isn't it? See, when Christ is in our midst, there is definitely hope for all of us. But at the same time, there's something that all of us have to lose. Maybe it's that stubbornness which keeps you from accommodating the needs of someone you love. Or perhaps that pride of yours which keeps you from asking for help. Maybe what you have to lose is that doubt that you have in yourself, or the feeling that you'll never be good enough. Or like Herod, you might be afraid that God is asking you to give away that status which you think defines you. But Jesus has come to say that none of these things are here to define us anymore. As we said earlier in our confession, these are things that cannot endure. All of our self-interests fall short of what we have to gain when Jesus is born into the world. Because God is with us, we can put our identity in Jesus. Not in accomplishments or how others view us or the wealth and status we can accrue, but Jesus, God in the flesh, who names you and loves you no matter what. God frees us from being inwardly focused so that we might lead meaningful lives filled with wonder in creation and love for all God's people. When you are struck with the realization of what Jesus' presence means for this world, how will you respond? this one who gave up everything so that you might live, who proclaims that the meek shall inherit the earth, who spent his days among the poor and the outcasts and the sick, who wants nothing more than for you to know that you are loved by God, no matter who you are or what you have achieved or what you have failed at miserably. This one calls each of us to live in response to that glorious grace which came down and made a home in a poor child sleeping in a manger. So now as the Christmas season comes to an end and a new year begins, may that star of hope lead you to Jesus. And may you lay your treasures down and worship the one who treasures you. Amen.